It's so long. This hearing will come to order. Good morning and welcome to today's hearing on the fiscal year 09 Department of Energy budget request and future directions for energy research and development. As indicated in the committee's scheduled notice, we invited Mr. Albright, the Undersecretary for Energy, and Dr. Orbach, the Undersecretary for Science, to present the administration's FY 2009 budget request on January 8th. Unfortunately, they felt that they could not appear before the subcommittee this morning. I'm disappointed in the treatment that this subcommittee is receiving by the department. And although the witnesses were invited in January, they didn't provide their testimony to the subcommittee until 9 p.m. last night. Apparently, DOE does not approve of one-panel hearings, which is commonplace on this committee and has been essentially the standard practice since the time of Representative Sensenbrenner chaired this committee. I'm very surprised and disappointed by this situation, but I'm prepared to proceed with the scheduled hearing. Mr. Isakowitz, although you were not invited to appear before us this morning, I want to give the administration an opportunity to present their budget request to the members of this subcommittee. So I invite you to stay seated where you are, take your seat at the witness table to participate in the hearing this morning, and I thank you for coming. The obstacles we face in energy and sustainability are of unprecedented scale and complexity. The Senate and House are working on legislation to institute a cap-and-trade program for greenhouse gases. We're still heavily dependent upon non-renewable energy supplies that are located outside our borders. We will only meet these challenges through aggressive and sustained support of research and development. That said, I understand the difficult task of balancing priorities for energy research and development in an unfavorable budget climate. In general, I believe the administration's budget request for DOE is a reasonable one. The administration has proposed increases for a number of important energy R&D programs. However, I believe we need more invested in other areas that hold the great promise for diversifying our energy supplies, energy efficiency, and renewable energy technologies. The budget request for the Office of Science is consistent with our efforts in the America Competes Act and the Democratic Innovation Agenda to increase investments in basic energy research and development. It was unfortunate that Congress was forced to make significant cuts to the FY08 basic research budget to avoid the President's veto, and I hope that a bipartisan commitment to ensuring our country's future prosperity will help to avoid a repeat of this situation in the year ahead. I'm pleased that this budget supports a restoration of funding for the U.S. contribution to the ITER, International Fusion Project, as well as research toward a proposed international linear collider. It is important for us to honor our international commitments. The credibility of the United States as a reliable partner in future international research projects will be significantly undermined if these corrective actions aren't taken. The picture for applied energy programs is not quite as good as the one for basic research. The budget request for energy efficiency and renewable programs is 27% below the appropriation for this year. While there are some notable proposed increases, there are some reductions that take us in the wrong direction. The cheapest, cleanest energy we will ever find is the energy we don't use. Therefore, I can't understand why the administration has once again elected to eliminate the Weatherization Assistance Program. We should be looking for more ways to encourage deployment of products and technologies that increase energy efficiency. We should also provide increased support for solar and wind energy. If we are to expand the energy supplied by these renewable sources, we will need sustained increases in funding for these programs. In the U.S., industry is responsible for 1/3 of all energy consumed, with the majority of that attributable to the heavy manufacturing sector that is struggling to stay competitive in an increasingly global marketplace. The administration's proposal to decrease funding for the Industrial Technologies program is baffling, especially in light of its record of success. On the positive side, I'm pleased to see the proposed increase for research and development in biomass and biorefinery systems. The increased investment in research and development for cellulosic ethanol production is essential if we are going to meet the targets we have set for bio-based fuels. I'm also pleased to see the administration's proposal to increase funding for the geothermal technology program after the administration proposed closing out this program just a year ago. The proposed funding level of $30 million is still far short of the $95 million authorized in the 07 Energy Act, but at least we're now moving in the right direction. There's much in this budget proposal that we can agree on, but not everything. What most troubles me is the administration's repeatedly ignoring the law by withholding funds and trying to repeal programs that Congress authorized and funded. And I'm going to repeat that slowly. What troubles me most is this administration repeatedly ignoring the law by withholding funds and trying to repeal programs that Congress has authorized and funded. Specifically, I'm talking about the oil and gas research project funded in Section 999 of the EP Act of 2005, EPACT of 2005. The administration should take the time to understand this program and see the potential in research collaborations between universities and small independent producers and to let them do their work. We cannot flip the switch overnight, and it's essential to develop and utilize new technologies that will enable us to reduce our dependence on foreign sources of energy. And finally, I must note the absence of ARPA-E in the budget request. What the department proposes in its place, a smattering of small interdisciplinary projects and a half-hearted reworking of the technology transfer policy, simply will not suffice as a substitute for implementation of this program. I've noted just a few items in this diverse budget proposal. Energy is essential to our way of life. We must do all that we can to ensure the Department of Energy has the resources to accomplish the monumental task of guiding us to a future with a more diverse energy supply that has fewer environmental impacts. Research and development investments are the key to that future. I hope the administration will work with us to secure a budget for DOE that will accomplish these goals. We have a distinguished panel of witnesses with us this morning, and I look forward to hearing your testimony. Right now, I'm pleased to yield to the distinguished ranking member of the subcommittee, Mr. Bob Inglis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I suppose I should respond to your opening statement, and that is that generally the Department of Energy has the courtesy of testifying, of having its undersecretaries testify on a single panel. And just last week, Admiral Lautenbacher, for example, in a similar situation, testified on a separate panel. I don't know why the committee decided this week to change all that and decide that they would not accord this protocol to the Department of Energy, but as a result, we're not hearing from Mr. Albright and Mr. Orbach. But we're happy to have the rest of the other panel here. I would ask, Mr. Chairman, that just to make sure that this is the case, that Mr. Albright's and Mr. Orbach's testimony, written testimony, will be included within the record.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Costello?
I object.
The objection is heard, and it will not be inserted in the record.
Ooh, that seems nasty.
Mr. Chairman, if I can be heard on my objection.
Mr. Costello?
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find it highly offensive that the administration did not send Mr. Albright, the Undersecretary, over here today to present their budget and to allow members to ask questions concerning the administration's budget. I'm not aware of the protocol as far in terms of who serves on what panel or is invited to testify before the subcommittee on particular panels, but I certainly do not believe that it should be up to this administration or any other administration as to how this committee conducts its business or who serves on what particular panel to present their testimony. Further, I believe that if we allow the administration just to submit their written testimony to this committee without coming over to allow members the opportunity to discuss the budget and ask questions, then what's to say that future administrations will say, well, the Bush administration got away with it, why don't we just send our written testimony over and protect our department from questions that the members of this subcommittee and committee may ask. So that is my objection, and that's why I'm reserving our
Thank you, Mr. Costello.
offering the objection.
Can I be heard on the point? It is, I wonder, Mr. Costello, last week, what do you think we did with NOAA?
Well, I don't know what the decision was, but my point is that it should be up to this committee and not the administration, this administration or future administrations, to determine who's going to be invited on which panel to testify. That should be left to the discretion of this committee. Are we in the future going to say, well, we invite you to come over and testify before this subcommittee, and then have the administration tell us when they want to testify, what they're going to testify to, and if they don't get their way, they're not going to come, they'll just submit written testimony? I find it highly offensive to this, and I think every member of this subcommittee should be offended by the fact that Mr. Albright did not appear here today, and I personally believe that there are other motives why they are not here today. I think it was to avoid questions concerning some of the decisions that have been made in this budget.
If I can be heard on that.
Before you comment, let me just make that there are 2 hearings scheduled next week under similar circumstances. NASA, single panel.
It appears to me that we would have had actually more time for questions, would we not, if there were separate panels? You would have another round of questions for everybody on the panel up here. So it doesn't make any sense, what you just said, that there'd be less questions. In other words, let's do the math. If we have 2 people out here and we have 5 people up here, 5 people get to ask 2 people questions. If they then go to a second panel, you actually multiply the number of questions, don't you? You double the number of questions for each panel.
I don't think if the gentleman would yield,
Yeah.
I don't think we're talking about the number of questions. I think we are talking about, one, letting the administration determine business that should be conducted by, and rules that should be adopted by this committee, decisions that should be adopted by the committee. And secondly, it's not a matter of the number of questions. I think my personal opinion is that Mr. Albright is not here today because he doesn't want to answer questions concerning certain issues in this budget, in particular about future gen. Now, that's my personal opinion, but go back to the point that either this administration, future administration, should not determine decisions that should be made by this subcommittee. And I am highly offended that they would not be here today. I think that every member of this subcommittee should be highly offended on both sides of the aisle. Who knows what's going to happen in the next election and which administration is going to be serving in the White House next. I don't think they ought to dictate the rules. I think we should.
Yeah, something tells me that will change if we get to post-partisanship. And if a future administration says that, would you give us the courtesy of letting our undersecretaries get back to their jobs?
So you're conceding that your side will not take the majority over in the November
Well,
election?
I'm hoping that Mr. McCain will also move us to post-partisanship. I'm not sure you got a nominee, but I assume you'll have one before the big dance in November. But we've got a nominee, and I think that he'll be talking about post-partisanship. And it seems to me quite a normal courtesy to simply say to the Dealey witnesses, come testify, answer plenty of questions, and then get back to work. Don't wait around while you have how many people you want to put on the panel. So the undersecretaries are detained here. They're happy to come and testify. They were willing to come and testify. But now what we've got is a little waste of time here as we discuss whether we're upset and offended that they didn't come and testify. Well, they were happy to come and testify, and they were going to answer questions. It's just it is a courtesy to allow the administration to come in, testify, and then leave. We did that last week. I don't know why we're not doing it this week. It really it's a it's one of those things where it's just sort of somebody got their back up, I guess, and decided that pride was more important than just moving along. And it's unfortunate, I think. So here we are in Science Committee with what's typically done in other committees, where you just have a little bit of pride entering into the situation and not allowing good work to be done.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know about the pride factor, but I do know this. I do know that this administration should not make decisions concerning policy that should be reserved for decisions made by this subcommittee. Yeah. For that reason, I continue to object.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be heard on the issue.
Recognized for 5 minutes.
I'm going to follow up by saying I'm surprised and disappointed that the DOE is not represented here this morning. I'm looking forward to some of the testimony. I read what was given this morning, and they seem to be setting a precedent here of not complying with our request for testimony. So I hate to see a pattern develop in which this committee and other committees call for testimony and are not given the obligation. So I'm going to join Mr. Costello and add my objection and disappointment to this behavior by the Department of Energy and the administration.
Your objection is noted. I might add that Mr. Isakowitz has been asked to represent the department and allowed to take the place. And I want to make a comment that I thought post-partisanship was already here, and it came with me when I came back to the House of Representatives in my effort to try to make sure that we didn't have nonsense like this. We do have a responsibility in this Congress, and our responsibility is that of oversight. We have, I thought, the right to set the rules when when I invited someone to our house. If a guest comes into my home, I typically don't allow them to tell me what I have to do in being a good host. It seems to me that that's the courteous way to handle something like this. I did not want this, but Albright's a friend of mine. And has been for a very long time. I have not spoken with him. I don't know all of the reason why this is occurring. It seems to me that the bottom line in my mind is that it's our responsibility to hear testimonies. We invite someone to come here to help us understand what that proposal is, that we ought to at least be able to set the terms of those visits. It's been that way. I believe that it was done that way under Mr. Sensenbrenner when I served under him, and he was the chairman of this Science Committee. I know that there have been cabinet members who have sat in this room at that table with other witnesses, not from outside witnesses. It was not intended to be offensive to the people that we invited to be our guests in any way whatsoever. I think that in order to be consistent and to make sure that we do things to set the precedent that needs to occur for future panels that we sit on, that I would uphold the objection.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ms. Bicker, you're recognized.
Thank you. I am disappointed that the gentlemen are not here, but maybe the side of the aisle is the hostess with the host, and there is a difference of opinion about the situation. And I don't think that the DOE is being unreasonable since the committee has not and will not be asking other administrative witnesses from NOAA and NSF and NASA to the DHS tomorrow to testify on a panel with outside experts. So I guess maybe we are in the silly season, but I think that's too bad. I'm most concerned with the gentleman from Illinois' comment that they are not here because they didn't want to answer questions. They have submitted their testimony, and we have it. I don't see any reasons for including that, and we have somebody that represents them to answer the questions. I don't know what evidence there is that they have something that they not want to tell us. I think that they have always been very open and answered our questions extremely well, and have been here. And I think this is just too bad that we have this situation, and I would ask that their testimony be included. Yield back.
Thank you. Just want to point out that on Tuesday and Thursday of next week, there are panels of administration officials who are going to be serving or testifying with outside panelists. So it is being done, and like I said a minute ago, there was one cabinet member who came with outside panelists under.
If the gentleman will yield, I think that
to.
they are not. The rule is not being applied uniformly, and so that this is why the question is raised.
How is it not being applied uniformly, or not being applied?
NSF and NOAA.
NASA and NIST have hearings scheduled next week.
Yeah, but some of them have outside and some have not.
Well, these two have, and I think that it should be the decision of this committee, not the decision of the administration telling us how we need to run our business. And again, it should cut across partisan lines. I mean, there should be no difference 10 years from now or 2 years. It should be that we set the rules, in my opinion.
Could the gentleman from Illinois answer why? What is the evidence that they don't want to answer questions?
If the gentlelady will yield, I didn't say that I had evidence. I said it was my personal opinion that Mr. Albright does not want to answer questions concerning the decision to scrap the Future Generation project. As the gentlelady may know, the chairman of the full committee, along with the chairman of the subcommittee, myself, and other members have asked the GAO to review the decision and how the decision was made by the administration to scrap this program after 5.5 years of investments and so on. But it's my personal opinion. But that is not the point. The point here this morning is, should the administration set policy for this committee, or should this subcommittee set our own policy and determine exactly what the rules will be for conducting business before this subcommittee? I don't think, the administration, as the ranking member said, that Mr. Albright was willing to come here this morning, but apparently he was willing to come under his rules and under his terms and conditions as to how he would testify or what panel he would be on. And I don't think that should be in this administration or any administration's discretion to set policy for this committee. And that is the entire point that I am making.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Biggert, are you finished with your time? Ms. Biggert, are you finished with your time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I recognize Mr. Inglis.
I'd just like to respond to the gentleman from Illinois that as of 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock last night, Mr. Albright was coming and was perfectly willing to come. DOE tells us that they have never testified at a budget hearing in a situation like this. In other words, that it has been the practice of this committee and the procedure to allow administration witnesses to present the budget and then get back to work. This is their work as well, but they also they have other things that they need to attend to. I think it's not accurate to say that Mr. Albright didn't want to come here and answer questions. He was happy to be here and to answer questions. If you do the math, he would have answered more questions this way. In fact, if you want more questions about FutureGen, do the math and you got more question opportunities with 2 panels than you got with 1. So if you want to make a point about FutureGen, the math works in your favor to have 2 panels. So, but what we're asking for here is simply this. Now DOE has not been accorded a courtesy, and now the minority is about to not be afforded a courtesy, and that is to ask unanimous consent. And now I would specifically ask unanimous consent to allow the testimony of Mr. Orbach and Mr. Albright to be admitted as part of the record.
Mr. Chairman, I object, and if we in fact follow this course and accept the testimony, we are sending a message to the administration and to the Department of Energy, and for that matter, other departments that this subcommittee has jurisdiction over, that they can set the rules, and if they do not like the policy set by this committee, they just simply do not have to come over and testify. They can submit their written testimony and set policy for this committee. We can continue this all morning if you would like, but the fact is, I think we are setting a terrible precedent here. I think, as I said earlier, all members of this subcommittee on both sides of the aisle should be highly offended that the administration has decided that they will come before this subcommittee only when they set the policy and under the conditions that they like. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I object.
And Mr.
Objection is noted. And
I request a vote to the objection notwithstanding to proceed with putting it in the record.
Mr. Chairman, before the vote, I'd like to ask a question on the ranking member.
hold on.
It's debatable, is it? Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure it's debatable at this point. I think we got to proceed to a vote.
Mr. McNerney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The ranking member said the DOE is never presented in a panel with other experts.
Hold on 1 second, please. I have to do something slightly differently than that. I have to say that it's my prerogative, I believe, to allow this testimony to go into the record or not, and I am choosing to not allow that testimony. And at this point in time, you may appeal that decision.
And so I appeal the ruling of the chair, Mr. Chairman.
Further proceedings on this will be postponed to the call of the chair. Recess for 15 minutes as of now. Okay, our meeting is back in session. I would recognize Mr. Costello for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Chairman, as you know, we have been talking to the minority on this issue. I would be willing to withdraw my objection if the minority will agree that we will not accept the testimony of administration in the future in lieu of an administration witness appearing before the committee to offer testimony unless there is unanimous consent to do so. Yield to the ranking member for his comment.
Yes, and I thank the gentleman from Illinois' suggestion. I think it's a good suggestion, and I agree with him that it should not be a precedent that we allow administration officials to duck hearings and submit written testimony. So I appreciate his offer, and I'm happy to accept it.
I thank the gentleman, and at this time I withdraw my objection.
The objection is withdrawn, and I ask Mr. English to continue with his opening statement.
Well, so thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we have achieved post-partisanship here. See, we work together cooperatively, and the nice thing about this committee is even though we have differences of opinion that arise from where you sit determines where you stand and all that, still there's no personal acrimony, and I very much appreciate that in the chairman and the gentleman from Illinois, my friends who I'm happy to work with. And so thank you for the cooperative spirit we've just seen in working through that. Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this hearing, and I want to thank our witnesses from the Department of Energy and the Government Accountability Office and the American Fiscal Society for appearing here today to discuss vital research and development projects and the funding for those. After looking over the administration's FY09 DOE budget proposal, I find myself in agreement with the 2 points that Mr. Bienenstock made in his submitted testimony. One, that the FY08 omnibus significantly damaged DOE funding, and DOE is now scrambling to recover. And two, it's not a good idea to cut off funding for the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Mr. Gaffigan from GAO will tell us that our investments in alternatives to oil are nowhere near what they were following the energy crisis in the 1970s. I wonder if that's because we don't believe we're coming up on an energy crisis of our own in this century, or if it's just that we're ignoring it. I'm disappointed that this budget proposal cuts away at hydrogen, solar, and nuclear energy alternatives that can create new industry, new jobs, and a better climate. Last year, about this time, I asked Andy Karsner for assurance that the final year of the President's Hydrogen Fuel Initiative did not mark the end of our commitment to hydrogen research and development. Mr. Karsner assured me that while the Hydrogen Fuel Initiative was coming to a close, it did not mark, quote, the end of the hydrogen program and its robust future that DOE expects to continue growing to meet its technological readiness milestones which are necessary over the next decade, quote, close quote. Today, DOE would suggest that we cut $64.9 million from the hydrogen program. Such a reduction would suspend applied research on renewable hydrogen and delay the advent of a hydrogen future. If enacted, this funding decrease would mean closure of laboratories dedicated to renewable hydrogen projects and a subsequent loss in the valuable momentum and research. The Department of Energy can help lead this country to energy security. American ingenuity, venture capitalists, and industry are ready to join in this effort. I hope we can find agreement that breaking free of oil requires great goals and great commitments. This budget should embody those goals and empower those commitments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Inglis. I ask unanimous consent that all additional opening statements submitted by the subcommittee members be included in the record. Without objection, so ordered. It's my pleasure to introduce our witnesses this morning. Our first witness is Mr. Steve Isakowitz, the Chief Financial Officer of the Department of Energy. Mr. Mark E. Gaffigan is the Acting Director of the Natural Resources and Environment Team for the U.S. Government Accountability Office. And Dr. Arthur Bienenstock is the President of the American Physical Society and Professor at Stanford's Synchrotron Radiation Laboratory and in the Departments of Applied Physics and Materials Science and Engineering at Stanford University. You will each have 5 minutes for your spoken testimony. Mr. Gaffigan and Dr. Bienenstock, your record for the hearing. And when you're all complete with your testimony, we'll begin with questions. Each member will have 5 minutes to question the panel. Mr. Isakowitz, please begin.
Mr. Chairman, Congressman Inglis, members of the subcommittee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to appear before you to discuss the Department of Energy's budget request for 2009. I think it is safe to say that the goals of the FY 2009 budget are largely unchanged from our budget goals in previous years. This budget request provides us the resources needed to continue to move forward on our 5 central missions. First, promoting and enhancing energy security. Second, nuclear security. Third, the scientific discovery and innovation. Fourth, environmental responsibility. And fifth, management excellence. Since 2001, this administration and Congress have invested more than $180 billion in the Department of Energy and its programs. These investments have been used to address the growing demand for affordable, clean, and reliable energy, have helped safeguard our national security, and have enabled scientific research leading to significant improvements in the quality of life and health of the American people and our environment. The Department's fiscal year 2009 request in the amount of $25 billion was developed with the need to continue these activities in mind and to address the energy challenges that confront us daily. An investment of this size allows us to fulfill our central missions as well as advance the goals of the President's American Competitiveness Initiative to ensure the U.S. technological competitiveness and economic security. It also allows us to continue our progress towards the goals of the President's Advanced Energy Initiative, accelerating the research, development, and deployment of clean, alternative energy technologies. The Department of Energy is responsible for promoting America's energy security. We encourage the development of reliable, clean, and affordable energy supplies, and strengthen U.S. competitiveness by leading in innovation and scientific discovery. At the same time, we continue to ensure the security of the nuclear stockpile, and we reclaim and restore the sites that are the nation's environmental legacy. All this is done under the rubric of sound management, consistent with the President's management agenda to improve performance and accountability. But this budget request also reflects our concerns about America's energy future. The projected growth in global energy demand is a major challenge for us all. It is a challenge that must be met with responsible action. Global demand will continue to grow. We cannot depend solely on hydrocarbons to meet it. This is a problem for all nations, energy producers, and consumers alike. I believe, therefore, that it is vital that the United States pursue policies that enhance global energy security, not just our own. We need new energy options, cleaner, more efficient technologies, and alternative fuels, and we must support fully the research and innovation necessary for their development. We must diversify our energy supplies, diversify our energy suppliers, and establish and secure additional energy supply routes. This budget document should also be viewed as a roadmap showing the future course of America's energy security. This course will not, in my judgment, be an easy one, but it is necessary. These efforts will require a sustained commitment on the part of government, strong private sector investment, and strategic collaborations between the government, the private sector, and the research community, including academia. Our goal is to foster continued economic growth and promote a sustainable energy future. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my statement, and I am pleased to answer any questions you or the other members of the subcommittee may have about the department's budget request.
Thank you, Mr. Isakowitz. Mr. Gaffigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, I'm pleased to be here to discuss long-term trends in DOE's energy R&D funding and key barriers to the development and deployment of advanced energy technologies. These issues are of critical importance as the nation strives to meet its energy needs. Today, the United States is heavily reliant upon conventional fossil fuels, with oil, natural gas, and coal providing most of our energy. Fossil fuels have provided the benefits of relatively cheap and plentiful energy and great economies of scale from a fossil fuel-based infrastructure. However, this is a dual-edged sword, as the lack of diversification in our energy portfolio does not easily provide alternatives when concerns about the cost and supply of fossil fuels rear their ugly head. Well, after a relative lull in these concerns since the price spikes and shortages of the 1970s and early 80s, these concerns are back, bigger than ever. Fossil fuel prices have risen, and a continued reliance on these finite resources, in particular foreign oil, has raised concerns about supply. However, adding to the mix of these renewed price and supply concerns is a relatively new and sustained concern about the environmental costs of fossil fuels, in particular the combustion of fossil fuels that account for significant amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. Advanced energy technologies offer the promise of alternatives to our current energy portfolio. DOE has funded research and development in advanced renewable, fossil, and nuclear energy technologies since the 1970s. Today, I would like to address two issues. One, the trend in DOE energy R&D funding, and two, the key challenges to develop and deploy advanced energy technologies. First, as the chart to my right shows, the trend in DOE energy R&D funding over the past 30 years has been a story of steep decline followed by slight recovery. In today's dollars, DOE energy R&D funding for advanced technologies in renewable, fossil, and nuclear energy peaked 30 years ago at $6 billion, falling 92% in 20 years to about $500 million before a rebound over the last 10 years to about $1.4 billion in 2008. However, funding today still has not reached a quarter of its peak of 30 years ago. DOE's FY 2009 budget for this R&D is about $1.8 billion. In addition, DOE's Office of Science has requested $4.7 billion, primarily for fundamental research in such areas as basic energy sciences, high-energy physics, and fusion energy. Some aspects of this basic research for things like material sciences may have useful applications for advanced energy technologies. Regarding advanced energy technologies, the development and deployment of these technologies present key technical, cost, and environmental challenges. For renewable energy, a key challenge is to make these technologies cost competitive. For fossil energy, a key challenge is to address the environmental impacts of emissions, in particular the carbon dioxide and mercury emissions of coal plants. Nuclear energy faces key challenges in addressing its high capital costs and environmental concerns about minimizing and managing nuclear waste. However, while DOE has spent about $57 billion over the past 30 years for R&D in these technologies, the nation's energy portfolio has not dramatically changed. As the second pie chart shows here to my right, conventional fossil energy in 1973 provided 93% of our needs, yet 30-plus years later, it still provides 85% of our energy. It is clear that DOE energy R&D funding alone will not be enough to deploy advanced energy technologies. Thus, coordinating DOE energy R&D with other federal energy R&D programs and policies, incentives, standards, and mandates will be important. In addition, other governments at the local, state, and foreign levels and the worldwide private sector will play key roles. To put all this in some perspective, one energy consulting firm recently estimated that worldwide clean energy investment could surpass $7 trillion by 2030. That's 122 times the $57 billion DOE has spent in the last 30 years. As the nation goes forward, it will be important for DOE energy R&D to find its niche amidst all these players and activities. Given the limited research dollars available to DOE, in the fiscal environment of a nation with a $9 trillion debt, it is important to make these dollars count. These dollars can count the most by targeting them towards specific and measurable goals with a clear federal role and benefits that make advanced energy technologies cost competitive and environmentally sound, so that their deployment will be sustainable in the marketplace. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my opening remarks. I've submitted a written statement for the record and welcome any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaffigan. And from Stanford, Dr. Bienenstock.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Inglis, members of the subcommittee, you have my written testimony. Let me summarize it briefly. In doing so, I will address two issues: the extraordinary damage done by the 2008 omnibus bill to DOE science and the balance between DOE's basic research and technology programs. My one chart, which shows GDP deflated appropriations for the Office of Science, shows that for more than 2 decades, the GDP corrected funding for science has been almost flat for DOE science. However, the deflator for scientific R&D generally runs about 1 to 2% above the GDP deflator. Using these numbers, we estimate that the Office of Science has lost approximately 1/3 of its budget capacity over the last 2 decades. In FY06 alone, the program suffered a real reduction of about 7.5%, and to date, the programs have not recovered. The 07 and 08 budget requests were designed to address this issue, but the appropriations failed to materialize. This year, the consequences have been enormous. 4 of the many major impacts are: first, the budget for the U.S. commitment to ITER was zeroed out, reneging on our commitment to this international project and severely damaging our reputation as an international scientific partner. That will make it much more difficult in future years for us to engage in other international efforts that will become very important as major scientific facilities grow increasingly expensive. Next is high energy physics. The reduction of R&D funding for the International Linear Collider and the zeroing out of the Neutrino Project NOVA make the future of the field very bleak. 500 people at Fermilab and SLAC are being laid off. An additional 10% of Fermilab's staff is being furloughed. The loss of expertise at these labs will hurt science broadly, and the message to any young American scientist is to avoid the field or seek a position elsewhere in the world. Third is the operation of basic energy sciences user facilities. These facilities support a broad range of scientific and technological research, from structural biology to semiconductor processing, with users from academic, government, and corporate labs. Even though they are typically doubly oversubscribed when operating at full capacity, they will suffer operating reductions of up to 20%. The impact will be felt throughout the U.S. scientific and technological communities. Finally, the 2008 budget has resulted in the rejection of 700 proposals in energy research the department had hoped to fund. Scientific advances will be delayed, and there will be significant layoffs of students and postdocs in the nation's universities as a consequence. Young people will turn away from scientific careers just when the nation needs them. It is vital that the damage done by the 08 Omnibus Bill be reversed, at least partially. I urge you to provide a supplemental appropriation of at least $300 million to the Office of Science and allow it to contribute to ITER. Now let me turn to the 09 budget request. I strongly support the request, and particularly if the supplementary appropriation is provided. With that budget, DOE can fund the academic programs, it can operate its facilities full-time, and instrument the magnificent new facilities coming online. Second, I believe that the administration's budget for the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy account is insufficient, and Congress must rectify it. However, Congress must not offset the increases to EERE by reductions in funding for the Office of Science. Tempting as it might be to put off for tomorrow the funding of long-term scientific discovery for the sake of achieving short-term technological gains today, we must resist doing so. Otherwise, the scientific basis for future technologies will be severely undermined. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Bienenstock. We will now move to our question period, and I recognize myself as chairman for the first 5 minutes. Mr. Isakowitz, I'm concerned that obstructive tactics by the Office of Management and Budget have impeded and unnecessarily delayed the implementation of Section 999 of the Energy Policy Act. We do not need burdensome governmental processes and intergovernmental wrangling to slow the benefits of American consumers. For American consumers. When will the research dollars that Congress has provided for the program begin to flow, more than the trickle that we've seen so far?
You mentioned earlier the administration's proposal to repeal Section 999, but in this fiscal year, we understand and we are operating under the statute to go forward with the program. And so, indeed, we are moving forward at this time, having put out a competitive solicitation, and do plan to make awards shortly with regards to this program.
I know that recommendations for research awards have been made to the department, and the researchers are simply waiting for a decision as to whether the projects are approved or not. But when can we expect DOE to approve or disapprove recommended research projects?
I don't have a date for you, but my understanding is we are on pace to do something soon with this program, and it's our intention to award these dollars.
Is there anything that Congress can do to help expedite the process?
No, I think at this time we have what we need to undertake this program in this fiscal year.
It's my understanding that the annual plans that have been developed by RIPSI and submitted to the Department of Energy have been developed with the input of thousands of scientists, geologists, and experts. I'm concerned, however, that OMB has slowed the ultimate approval of the 2007 annual plan and may well slow the approval of the 2008 annual plan. Does OMB have the technical expertise to evaluate the proposed annual plan?
Well, as you know, as part of putting together the research plan, as you said, we through FACA committees, we have reached out to the community, done a thorough review, and of course we coordinate within the administration for getting the job done. We believe that the research plan that we have provided previously and we will be providing in the future should adequately provide the kind of information necessary to implement this program.
I think the real answer to that is no, it should reside with the advisory committee. Does OMB have any authority to review the annual plan before it is approved?
On many matters that go before the Congress, we do, in fact, coordinate with OMB in advance of submission of that material.
The answer is no, right?
Well, on this matter, we do coordinate with OMB.
Okay, the answer is no. Why would OMB insert itself in the annual plan review process at all?
Because on matters dealing with how money is going to be spent in various areas, we do coordinate, within the administration to ensure that, there's consistency and we are not overpromising or obligating the administration in future years.
Section 999 provides for the establishment and operation of a technical committee that, among other duties, will ensure that the research activities of NETL and RIPSI are not duplicative. Has a technical committee been established, and what are the roles of the DOE and RIPSI on that committee?
Frankly, sir, I'm not aware of that committee, and I'd have to get you an answer back for the record.
Should there not be a greater degree of communication between NETL and RIPSI, and perhaps even including establishing a small NETL office near RIPSI? And perhaps I should say I don't think that NETL has collaborated with RIPSI on this matter. Do you want to make any comment on it?
Sir, we're happy to sit down with you and your staff as to how you feel there are better ways we can work between the various organizations. We think we're trying our best with regards to reaching out to the various organizations and getting their input, so in fact, we do have a good program.
I think instead of us sitting down with it, the law said a specific statement and even appropriated the money. It just seems to me that the executive branch has a responsibility of following the law. Maybe instead of us sitting down and discussing it, that we need to revisit what Congress said, or y'all need to revisit what Congress said and the laws that it passed and the President signed. That being said, I'm going to stop at this point and yield to the ranking member for his 5 minutes of questions. Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Isakowitz, am I pronouncing it right?
Isakowitz.
Isakowitz, okay.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Thank you for being here. And question for you is see, the budget proposal has cuts for hydrogen, solar, and nuclear infrastructure. I think it has an increase for the biomass program. Other than that biomass program, can you highlight any significant lines that might indicate long-term investments to breaking our dependence on oil?
Yeah, I think it's important to look at it, certainly in its totality. With regards to the overall renewable budget, it's true that there are some areas that are going up, some areas that are going down. We've set out very aggressive paths with regard to implementing a lot of the technologies, in the various areas. You do mention in the case of biomass that it is an area that's going up. We have proposed increases in wind and geothermal and building technologies. And there are good reasons why you see changes in some of the other areas. I think it's also important to note that when one views the renewable budget, we have another program that's important for the Department of Energy, our loan guarantee program. That is also an effective means by which we can help to bring a lot of these research efforts out of the laboratories and working with industry to actually see them implemented with regards to industry in the marketplace.
That's helpful to know about. So you're highlighting biomass, wind, geothermal, and building technology. Those are key areas to focus on. What was the rationale for reducing hydrogen, solar, and nuclear?
As you mentioned in your opening comments, the President did commit to spend $1.2 billion over 5 years from 2004 to 2008 in a hydrogen initiative. That having been said, the Department of Energy does not view the end of that 5-year period being the 2009 budget as in any way a sunset for that activity. I think instead we view it as a maturing of that activity where we've learned a lot in terms of things that are going well and things that need more work. I think if you look at the overall funding for hydrogen across the department, the funding does drop from the 08 enacted by about $13 million, and a lot of that is coming out of the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. The other thing you need to keep in mind is we have significant increases in the Office of Science. In fact, we have a $24 million increase in hydrogen in the 2009 budget. I believe that reflects that things that we have learned and opportunities that we see that require longer-term, more fundamental research to ensure the success of the initiative. Also, I would add that we've tried to, within the funding with an EERE, to make sure we focus on those things that meet the date of 2015 in terms of addressing critical path technologies.
Of course, the 24 million increase in hydrogen, for example, in the Office of Science, that's nice. It doesn't compare very favorably to 1.2 billion.
Yeah, and again, when I talk 24 million, that's just going from 08 to 09. 1.2 billion is a grand total across 5 years of the
Right.
budget. So, for example, in 09, we're proposing 266 million, of which a sizable portion of that is from the Office of Science.
166 million for
Overall, for hydrogen across the Department of Energy
09.
for 09.
Okay. What's the impact of earmarks on the money that's been spent in that 1.2 billion?
I can't speak specifically with regards to the earmarks within the hydrogen initiative. I can speak more broadly with regards to the Department of Energy. We have seen a very worrisome growth in the number of earmarks across the department in a lot of our critical areas. In fact, if we look at the level of earmarks between 2002 and 2008, we've had a total of $3.8 billion in earmarks within the Department of Energy. And when you consider all the things we've talked about, $1.2 billion for a hydrogen initiative, that is a substantial amount of money, and that is an area of increasing concern for the department in order for it to accomplish its mission.
Yeah, what I've heard, tell me if you agree with this, is that the earmarks, especially in hydrogen, for demonstration projects, let's say, that really don't demonstrate a whole lot, except maybe the ability of a member of Congress to bring home some bacon, really have eroded some of the punch that could have been delivered in hydrogen. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think what we have proposed, I believe, is a very tight but highly prioritized budget with regards to hydrogen, and we do think to the extent that other things are crowding that out, then we're having a less than optimal budget.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Bienenstock, did you have some comment you wanted to add about that, about the earmarks especially, or?
Well, there's no question that the $124 million of earmarks in the Office of Science budget had an enormous impact. I wouldn't have been speaking about these other matters if that money had gone to the Office of Science. And I assure you that within the academic community, I am working to get the universities to show more discipline in their requests through the Association of American Universities and the Council on Government Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Time's up.
Ms. Giffords, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the panelists for being here today. I come from a very sunny state, the state of Arizona, so most of my questions are going to be on solar energy. The President's requests for solar research and development funding have not only failed to increase during recent years, but they've also failed to keep pace with inflation. This is in despite of the case that solar energy is growing stronger with each passing year, not just in the Southwest, but in states across the country and countries across the world. And solar is increasingly becoming a viable solution for some of the greatest challenges our nation faces in terms of our dependency on foreign energy, in cases as well of global warming and climate change and U.S. competitiveness as well. It also is becoming more competitive in terms of a cost standpoint with coal-fired electricity. So I would like to ask Mr. Isakowitz specifically why the President is not committed to spending more resources on solar energy when this opportunity is presenting itself.
We fully agree with you with the importance of solar energy with regards to a national strategy on energy. I think it's important to view our investments in the research part of solar energy as part of a bigger investment that's being made nationwide. And when we often look at our investments, we look at where the technologies are and, in fact, what is industry investing in these areas. I think solar is one of the areas that we're seeing an increasing amount of industry and private sector investment going in that area. So we tried to be much more pinpointing in terms of the investments we make within solar. We do have a Solar America initiative, which is very important, which continues on track in terms of achieving its goals. I mentioned earlier that we have a loan guarantee program, of which right now we're negotiating with 2 firms that are trying to bring online some very innovative ideas on one for concentrating solar power at a rather large scale, and another one where we're working on some innovative ideas with regard to thin film technologies on photovoltaic. And those efforts are actually quite considerable, and if you look at the volume of the dollars we're talking about there, they certainly surpass just the research part of it. So in addressing it, we have to consider all those things, the research dollars, what we can do in the loan program, what the private sector is doing, and so we feel that the investments we're making are adequate to invest to meet those needs.
You mentioned concentrated solar power. I'm curious, does the CSP budget contain an increased funding for thermal energy storage, and if so, what amount?
I'd have to get back to you on that one. I don't have it at my fingertips.
If you would. And the other issue that I wanted to bring up is this workforce training, where this Congress has had a chance to authorize workforce training, because that's something that we hear from the installers in the field, and we hear from people around the country. They're interested in solar, but we do not have enough qualified, trained installers. Again, Congress moved forward to authorize this training, and it has not been put in the President's budget. So could you please address that?
Yes, I mean, I think this is something that's true across the board, whether you're talking the nuclear, solar, or the various other different technologies, and we recognize this is a critical area. I believe it was in the America Competes Act that called for investment in this area and identified some amount of funding that should be set aside to address that, and we're in the process now of doing a cross-cut to making sure that we are making adequate investments in this area. That having been said, we also recognize that our national labs are a great attraction to students coming out of school and an opportunity to do research. So in more recent years, we've tried to get more aggressive out at our national labs, working with faculty and students to try to encourage them to pursue critical careers in these needed skills.
A couple questions I have. The wind program in DOE's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy has articulated a specific goal of wind power providing 20% of the electricity in the United States. I want to know whether or not there's a comparable goal for solar.
There is a goal, and I'm probably going to get you back for the record on that one, but I think the goal that they have primarily set is that by, I believe the date was 2015, they tried to have solar to be cost competitive against the other technologies that are out there.
If you could get back to me on that. And one last question. Mr. Bartlett had been working with us on his interest in solar technology, and in terms of an amendment offered by Representative Bartlett on solar lighting and also solar air conditioning, I noticed that the President had failed to include that in the funding, and I was just curious why the President has not taken, again, those initiatives brought forward by Congress into consideration.
As in with every tight budget, you know, there's a lot of exciting opportunities of things we can fund, and oftentimes in a tight budget, we just have to set some priorities.
I know, but Mr. Bartlett's been here a very long time and is one of our smartest members on the committee. So, you know, if you could please bring back that consideration to the President, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giffords, and I recognize Dr. Bartlett for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Dr. Bienenstock, your concern about the decrease in basic research and R&D funding is very appropriate. Cutting funds in those areas is the exact equivalent of the farmer eating his seed corn. I represent a rural area. I have a lot of farmers. Not one of them is dumb enough to eat their seed corn. And I think that they are quite surprised that our government is dumb enough to eat its seed corn in this area. So thank you very much for your concern and your counsel. Mr. Gaffigan, you note that fossil fuels are finite. You made that statement. Help me understand how our long-term interests are served, if in fact these fossil fuels are finite and our present objective is to go out and find the remaining reserves as quickly as we possibly can and consume them as quickly as we possibly can. How is that in our long-term security interest?
Thank you. And I would, I would say we have invested in this infrastructure. We have bought into fossil fuels, and it is so hard to change off that course because they've been relatively cheap, relatively inexpensive, and it's very hard to change course and get kind of dramatic change unless there's some realization that we're going to address the environmental impacts and through try to establish some type of mandates or standards that say that that's a bad idea. Again, that's a policy decision. But I think ultimately it's hard to get off of an investment we've made in fossil fuels. And I think to some extent fossil fuels are still going to be part of our picture going forward. Everyone you talk to says it's going to be part of it.
It will be a part of it. We're kind of like, as the President observed, the cocaine addict that just has to have another fix. We're hooked on oil, addicted to it. He is exactly right. Mr. Isakowitz, why are we interested in hydrogen?
I think hydrogen, like fusion research, I think represents those sort of holy grails out there that if we're successful in these areas of...
if we're successful in what areas?
In the areas like hydrogen, if we can in fact move towards an economy that can support...
Again, why are we interested in hydrogen?
Well, because it reduces our dependency on other forms of energy, such as
how's it going to do
energy.
that? How's it going to do that since hydrogen is not an energy source? We always will use more energy producing hydrogen than we get out of it. So the more hydrogen you use, the less usable energy you have, unless we have some improvements in fuel cells. Is that not correct? That the only justifiable reason for a heavy investment in hydrogen is if we have fuel cells, for which it is a great candidate. Because burning it in a reciprocating engine doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because you could have burned the thing you were making the hydrogen from in the reciprocating engine and gotten more energy from it, because the second law of thermodynamics assures that, does it not?
I defer to your expertise on this matter, sir, but I'll just suffice it to say that the department does recognize that it is an important issue with regards to how you go about producing the hydrogen. That's why, as part of our, for example, in our nuclear program, we have efforts to look at how, through the conduct of nuclear energy, we can find more affordable ways from which to produce the hydrogen that can, in fact, support a hydrogen economy.
Yeah, if we have a big increase in nuclear electricity generation, hydrogen makes some sense, because think of it, sir, in terms of a battery. It's a convenient way to carry energy from one place to another. It is not an energy source. It is not a silver bullet. It will not solve our problem. There is an enormous amount of irrational exuberance in this whole area. There was a lot on hydrogen. Today, the irrational exuberance is on biomass and cellulosic ethanol. I would encourage you to pull up and read a speech given 51 years ago, the 14th day of this May, by Hyman Rickover, the father of our nuclear submarine, and he wisely warns that you probably shouldn't be burning your food. We learned that with our silly expansion of corn ethanol, which doubled the price of corn, raised the price of wheat and soybeans worldwide, and created what one UN official said was a crime against humanity. He also warned that you probably shouldn't be burning the biomass that will go back to increase the tilt of your soils and ensure their fertility. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I recognize Mr. Lipinski for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank witnesses for their testimony, and good to see you again, Dr. Bienenstock. I was out there at Stanford last year and also towards SLAC, and I have great concerns about the cuts to the high energy physics and the impact that has not only on SLAC but on Fermi in my home state of Illinois. All the cuts, the layoffs that have taken place at both Fermi and SLAC are very troubling. The impact that this is going to have on the United States position in terms of high energy physics. Obviously, I know as a former academic, you cut off the funding, people are going to leave. First, you're not going to get interest in students coming in and studying that in the future, but you're going to have all these scientists leave our country, go elsewhere. And we have great hopes for the International Linear Collider at Fermilab, and certainly I don't see, unless something is done right now, I just don't see that moving forward as the high energy physics really is left in lurch here in the United States. So I want to ask Mr. Isakowitz if there's any plans that the administration has to submit a reprogramming request or supplemental request to address the 2008 funding shortfall in high energy physics.
No, with regard to higher energy physics, we're not planning to send up a reprogramming in that area. We have sent up with regards to ITER, because that is a program, it's an important international program that has been zeroed out. We are deeply concerned and with regards to our international commitments on that effort and our obligations. The reprogramming that we sent up does not offset what was lost in the 2008 appropriations, but will provide us with the funding needed to at least keep the project office open so that we can continue to work with our international partners on this important effort. And we are hopefully will achieve that reprogramming soon. So in fact, we can keep the office open, which I think we have funding currently only through the end of March.
I think ITER is also a very important program. It's good to hear that. But Dr. Bienenstock, what impact do you think this is going to have on high energy physics in the United States?
Oh, as I stressed in my testimony, I think it's a disaster for high energy physics, and more than that. We are going to see a loss of accelerator physicists, and you think of accelerator physicists primarily for high energy physics, but they are the people who have made possible the new spallation neutron source at Oak Ridge. They are the people who originally made possible the synchrotron facilities like the one that I operated that was originally a high-energy physics accelerator and then became a synchrotron facility. We will need them for the next generations of the X-ray free electron lasers based on what's going on at SLAC. And I fear that they will disperse to Europe and elsewhere, and we will lose enormous capability where we were world leaders.
And I share your great concern about that. One other issue I wanted to address was FutureGen. I'm very unhappy with the decision that was made on FutureGen. In March of 2007, DOE signed these cooperative agreements with industry to build FutureGen, and then the announcement being made essentially that DOE was reneging on the commitment that it had made, and right now it doesn't look like it's not that there's money being saved even, but my great concern is I think FutureGen and what we're trying to do with FutureGen is very critical to our energy needs and the environmental concerns that we have now, global warming. But, why should anyone believe DOE is a worthy partner when they see DOE back out of FutureGen like this?
Assume that's directed to me.
Yes.
First, to be clear, the department is completely and fully committed to the FutureGen and the goals of FutureGen. And we fully, as you've articulated, recognize the importance of being able to demonstrate carbon capture and sequestration at a large scale as being critical for the industry. That having been said, the department office often is faced with a situation that, although committed to a goal, must also watch out for the taxpayer. And the feeling was that under the current arrangement, that there was a better way to go forward than the arrangement that we had, driven by two factors. One is the significant cost growth that we've seen in the program, and the concern that even though we had a number now that was a lot bigger than we started with 900, it's now 1.8 billion, we were concerned that that number would continue to grow. Second factor to keep in mind was the significant change in the marketplace itself. When we started this program, a lot of effort with regards to IGCC, integrated gasification and combined cycle plants, was more of a research effort. Today, it's not just a research effort. We actually have the private sector making important investments in this area. In fact, under our loan program, we had two companies that had come in fact, we're in negotiations with now with regards to pursuing an IGCC plant. And we're seeing increasing numbers of other companies wanting to pursue it in this uncertain regulatory environment that we see in a number of states. So the critical component for us has been the CCS, the carbon capture and sequestration. So what we've tried to establish is a program that allows us to potentially award more than one site, to demonstrate this in a variety of areas and to get it out in the commercial marketplace potentially faster than we otherwise would have done when we were treating it as a research program. So it was really driven by these two factors. One was the concern that we wouldn't be able to control costs in its current configuration, and second, we saw a major change in the marketplace.
Well, I know my time is up, but I just wonder about how the DOE could go and choose a site and then so quickly all of a sudden say, okay, after all that, we really are not moving forward with this after the site is chosen, the announcement is made. I have great concerns about that, but I know that my time's up and we
Gentleman's time has expired, and we do want to move on because we've got votes that we're going to run out to, and I recognize Ms. Biggert for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank the Department of Energy for remaining committed to the American Competitiveness Initiative and the spirit of the America Competes Act in fiscal year 2009 budget request, despite the failure by this Congress to fully fund related R&D programs in each of the last 2 years. And I know that the DOE was particularly hit hard by the FY08 omnibus, and I as the prior speaker said, we've been hit by the fallout in the suburbs of Chicago with the premature shutdown and reduced operation of the user facility at Argonne and the furloughs and layoffs at Fermilab, which I am so upset about. I'd like to look at just broader. First of all, 1/2 of the growth of the GDP since World War II has been attributed to science and technology innovation, and we are not competing as a country. And we are losing ground to so many other countries, and the ability for us to be able to compete economically is based on this physical research and development. And we're sitting here talking about all these little things, but we are not, as a nation, really looking to push this. Our committee needs to do this, and we've been doing this on a bipartisan basis, but I think we really have to follow, our committee and our Congress has to follow through on our commitment to increase the funding for basic research. We've asked for doubling, and now it's gone down. We've seen from both Dr. Bienenstock's charts and Dr. Gaffigan's charts that we're not making any progress practically at all. And we're all singing on the same page, but we're not in key. And if we don't find a way to make this a priority, and we talk about it, we've got an R&D caucus, we've got all kinds of things where we talk about this. And I really thought that our members were all on the same sheet, and yet then we find the appropriators cutting in the omnibus bill, or the leadership, however that happened. It's making such a mistake, and we see, we're talking about ethanol, but if we don't progress on our nuclear energy, and our reprocessing, it takes a long time to do that. And we have to use every means in alternative energy to proceed. And we just keep saying backsliding. So, that said, one of the questions is, what are the consequences of to American businesses of reducing the operation of DOE's user facilities by 20 to 25%? At Argonne, that's going to happen. and have businesses raise concerns about this? And does American industry have the option of taking their research overseas? And what's the likelihood that these industrial users will ever bring back the research to the U.S. if that's true? If they maybe Dr. Isakowitz, you can, or Mr. Isakowitz, you could, I don't know, you could, I don't have much time here, we're going to vote, but if you could answer that briefly.
Yes, I think you raised two very important points. Our funding in the Office of Science, I think it's interesting that it's under an initiative with the title the American Competitiveness Initiative. I think too often people associate funding in basic research as not necessarily tied to the economy and the competitiveness. We do. We take it very seriously. In fact, in our 2009 budget proposal, we have identified a number of areas where areas in basic research teamed up with our applied side of the house to make funding in a number of areas such as energy storage, carbon capture, dealing with advanced plasma technologies, as a way to ensure that the basic research we do, in fact, is inspired to ultimately make its way into the marketplace.
And I've just got one more statement, and I'm going to run out of time, so I'll cut you off. I commend the DOE for issuing the funding opportunity announcements for the construction and operation of a facility for the rare isotope beams. We call it kind of a real light, but now it's called FRIB. I guess is the new name. But this is welcome progress on a project that has been identified as critical to maintaining the U.S. leadership in nuclear physics and nuclear science. So this project isn't new, and it's been on the drawing board, but I hope that you will commit to sticking to the timetable of this project. And I don't think that the department has had a very good track record when it comes to to these projects and the commitment, whether we're talking about RFPs for RIA in 2005 or future gen. So I hope that you'll prevent this project from slipping any further. And with that, I'd just like to thank Dr. Bienenstock for bringing up the Fermi and Argon and all of those projects that are so important. And I hope that we all will, continue to really push for this research and development. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Biggert. And I want to thank all of you for appearing before the subcommittee this afternoon. I will apologize for the way that we started our session out. Those of you who are not from the government, it was the government's fault. All of us. Under the rules of the committee, the record will be held open for 2 weeks for members to submit additional statements and any questions that they might have for the witnesses. We will submit our additional questions. We will not come back following the votes. We thank you all very much. This hearing is now adjourned.